Welcome to the Gyne Talks Podcast. Myself and guests will be sharing our experiences and journeys, talking all things gynecology related. Now, there is a trigger warning here that we will be talking about some very sensitive subjects. However, I really hope that you enjoy this episode. So welcome to another episode of Gyne Talks. Today we are joined by Heather, who has an array of experience in menopause and all things that come with that. So firstly, thank you for joining me today, Heather.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. So to start us off then, tell us a little bit about your journey and what you're up to.
Okay. So I'm a co-founder of Regain Your Vitality, and this came about because of lived experience. So, I mean, we all think we know, you go through life and you're taught about periods and, about giving birth, and you know that there's a word called menopause.
Yeah.
But I wasn't prepared for it. And I don't know why, but it seems like I'm not the only one once I started talking to a group of other people.
Absolutely. There's so many of us that, as women, we understand there's the word menopause and it's something that's going to happen to all women, but we just don't know enough about it and it's not talked about enough. So is that kind of where everything for you came from? And as you say, lived experience that...
Yes, definitely. So I had out of the menopause comes with a whole variety of symptoms.
Oh, yes.
I would say I had about 38 of the symptoms
Wow.
throughout the time I was perimenopausal. But I had no idea. And I think what that was because when I started, I mean, it doesn't happen to you in one go. And I think that's where the difficulty is. It's a slow progression of things that are happening to your body. And if you don't link it together, it's very difficult to actually come up with something.
And it's actually very scary, isn't it? Because
yes.
Like you say, all these different things are happening. You're like, whoa, what is this? Why is it? Like, what's going on?
Definitely. And I think for me, what came to head is when I thought about menopause and what I'd heard, it was about hot flashes. So I thought, oh, okay, I'm definitely not menopausal. I didn't even think of that word. I just thought there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. And it was only after I became postmenopausal. So I'm just going to explain so menopause has got 3 stages.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Perimenopause, where you have some symptoms, and we can go into that a little bit later. Then you have menopause, which is a day and time in your life. So it's 12 months after you've had the last period is when you're menopausal. And anything beyond that is postmenopause. So most people, or at least I thought that you got hot flashes perimenopausal. And I didn't get any hot flashes until I was postmenopausal. And it suddenly clicked that all those things I was having, I must have been perimenopause.
It was just leading up, just leading up to the big day of that official kind of menopause day. We should celebrate that. Women should really celebrate that.
Because it made sense, but I was also like, I felt a bit cheated, and I thought, well, I could have said this was what was happening. I could have rationalized the way I behaved, the way I thought, the things that were going on in my life. I could have rationalized that had I known that was menopause, but because I didn't, and I got to a point where I actually thought that I might have early onset of dementia.
Wow, okay.
Because my mom had it. And I thought, okay, and the type that she has is hereditary, and you start getting it in your 40s. And I was beginning to forget things. My memory, couldn't find the words to say, if I remember doing a presentation once, and I just couldn't remember anything. My mind just went completely
goes blank. And that's such a scary thing to happen. And that's happened a lot to me in small doses, but also in situations where you just don't think it's going to happen. And that can be, as you say, when you're talking, you're speaking about something. But I remember distinctively, just over a year ago, I'd taken my car for an MOT in a city not far from here in Gloucester. And I know Gloucester. I used to work there for years. I've, been there many a time. And I'd taken my car, dropped it off, and I was like, right, I'll go and grab a cup of tea and a sandwich or something while it's, kill an hour's time. And went into the town, and there's a crossroads right in the middle. It's kind of all pedestrianised. And as I was going back to the car, I got to that crossroad point and was just gone. I was like, which way did I come from? Where do I go? And thank goodness for Google Maps on your phone, because I was just in such a flap. I just absolutely lost, gone out of my brain of, well, I have no idea which way I came from.
Were you driving or were you walking?
I was walking. And it was
Imagine, it's bad enough when you're walking. Imagine if you're driving and you have that moment. What are the potential consequences of all that?
Absolutely. And again, technology is great. And as I just said, but maps, I have to use them everywhere I go. Not necessarily, to a friend's house or whatever. I've been before. But even when I'm driving to the hospital and back, I tend, I've been there 1,000,001 times, but I tend to have it on, mainly to see for traffic. But it just gives me that reassurance that if for any reason I had that blip, that I've got that path to follow. Well, no, that's great when you're in a situation when you can utilize something like that. But when you're in a moment of, like you say, you're giving a speech or you're just having a general conversation, there's no map to help you. And I'm sure there are lots of things you can do to try and train your mind.
That's definitely true. Just to say that you're not alone in experiencing that. I'm sure we all have a tale. Mine was with my daughter, and I was going to the doctor, and we'd been there, like you say, several times. And she's a teenager, so she was on her phone, and I drove past the surgery, and then she looked up and she says, "Where are you going?" So I said to the doctor's surgery, all very confident, thinking, well, if you were not on your phone and talking to me, we might have a conversation. And she goes, "You've just passed it." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, you've just driven past it." And I thought, "Oh,
have I?"
I know. So it happens to us at moments least expected to.
Absolutely. Moments when you least expect it, for sure.
Yeah. So, there are, like you said, ways to help with brain fog. And it's important to realize as well, while there are tools and tips, they're not overnight. It's not going to happen it's not a pill. It's not a magic pill that you take and tomorrow morning you just suddenly have clarity of mind. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way.
But brain fog is a massive part of peri-menopause, menopause and post-menopause. It's part of massive part of it. But you said you had 38 symptoms.
Yes,
and piecing them together, if you'd known about them to link it to menopause, you wouldn't obviously, like you say, unfortunately, your mum has dementia, that you automatically went to that place of, wow, this is now happening to me at a younger age and whatnot. But understanding what these symptoms can be makes it all the more better, obviously, hence why we're talking about it today, to help others. So what were some of the other symptoms that you had?
Oh gosh, where do I start? I had joint pain. I had very irregular, and my periods became very heavy. I don't say that's actually the start for me. And this, when I look back, that started around in my mid-30s is when I started having the irregular and very heavy periods. And funnily enough, I'll tell you a story about women camaraderie. If you, I worked in an office, and I had a lady that we worked in the same building, but she had a different office, and her office was a little bit more private than mine. Mine was like a thoroughfare, and everybody used to just pop in at different times. And so, because my periods were so heavy and they were irregular, I just never knew when I was going to come on. So I asked her if she could keep my, all the things I use in her room, and she said yes. But in this discussion, I don't know why it was the topic of conversation with her husband, but the husband was tracking her periods, and for some reason we started syncing. As I don't know why that happens, but
that does happen, doesn't it? Yeah.
So he would say, "You haven't spoken about Heather coming to get any of her, tampons or something. What's happening?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't know." So she'd come to me and say to me, "Have you not started your period?" I'm like, "No." And she'll be like, "Well, it's been 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks." I'm like, 6 weeks? And then
she's like, is that time?
And I'm thinking, am I pregnant? But, I wasn't expecting, I wasn't planning to be. And I'd go to the pharmacy and I'd take a pregnancy test. And that happened throughout the whole year. And in this time, I did go to the doctors, and they just kind of brushed it off for a bit. And then the second year, it got worse. And it got to a point where I had to make sure I had a change of clothes just in case I flooded myself. And one day I went to the doctor and I was like, I'm not going anywhere because there's something happening and I'm so scared because I'm scared to sleep because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm
And
at
I
work,
guess,
what's happening.
and I guess for you at that point, if you're, one thing being able to have that confidence and speaking to your work colleague to leave sanitary items there just in case, but to then get to that stage of, I better start carrying a spare pair of clothes and underwear and just make sure you're prepared. That must have had a real toll on your mental health as well. Just
Yes.
the unknown, isn't it? Of, oh gosh, it could happen any moment. And, if you want to go out for the day or, making plans, that must have been really difficult for you.
Was, especially when you've had an accident and somebody's seen you in the morning and you're wearing, I mean, I don't have many of the same things. So I might be wearing black pants and trousers. And then then I wear a different type and someone will be like, were you wearing that earlier on? And then you don't want to explain why you've changed, and you just wish, I mean, in the end, I used to say, well, I like my clothes and I'm getting fat. So I'm just trying all of them. And if it means I'm going to change twice a day, I change twice a day. People thought I was a bit loony, but I just thought, how do you explain to people who you don't want to explain to them anyway?
That's the thing, because it is a private matter and it's something that you're going through and you're trying to navigate it yourself. Let alone trying to have to explain to other people, like, oh, I'm sure you had like jeans on this morning and now you have a skirt on. Hang on a minute. Like, what's happening?
What's happening?
And like you say, then you're having, or you feel like you have to mimic that or hide that by, oh no, I'm just, I'm having a wardrobe refunction, or I'm just getting rid of some clothes. I'm just testing them all out and trying to make light of it. But deep down, you're just dreading
you're
that happening.
You're most, and it does your mental health definitely does get affected during that period. There's no way you have to change your life because things around you have changed, and you're not changing it to things that people can't see, because this is something that is visible to people. It was visible to people around you. So that was one of the really major ones that I had. And then I was given a Mirena coil by the doctor. He never explained the reason why. He just said to me, oh, I'm just giving this to you and we'll see whether that helps with your period. At no point did he say anything about hormones. I didn't even know what it was. I was just told it's a coil and they're putting it in. And those days I just trusted the doctors.
And that it would help, essentially.
Yes, it would help. And I just went along with it. It's now that I'm more knowledgeable about, I realize a Mirena coil is one of the things that because it's got hormones, and it's one of the things that helps to control the hormones in your body to be able to try and regulate it. I was like, but why didn't anyone say that to me?
Absolutely. Now, I had the Mirena coil for a while because I have endometriosis and I'd had so many operations. I've had 10 in total. But I think I was about operation number 7 or 8 in that journey. And they were like, just try the coil. It'll be really good. It'll, it's relieved a lot of symptoms for a lot of women. And eventually I was like, okay, let's just try it. And literally from the moment they put it in to the moment I made them take it out, I bled consistently.
Oh my gosh.
Or it would be a few days where I wouldn't bleed, and then boom, it would be back again. And it's very similar. You get up in the morning and you think, oh, I'm okay today.
Yes.
And then you that would perk you up. You'd be like, okay, this is good. And then you go about your day, and then I don't know, later on in the afternoon you'd be like, oh yeah, great. It started again. And it's that same thing of that constant worry and feeling very intense and conscious about it. Again, especially with what to wear, what do I wear? And it's draining, absolutely draining. So for me, that particular coil didn't work, and I rang the doctor and I was like, went in and I was like, you need to get it out before I try and get it out myself. It's coming out one way or another. I suggest you do it because I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but it needs to come out. And it just didn't have a great effect for me. But I know a lot of ladies have had a really positive experience with it. And I guess it just depends on your body, your hormones, and everything else that's going on.
And that's the thing about menopause as well, is every woman goes through it differently and at different
Absolutely.
stages and experiences different things. So it is quite difficult to, to pinpoint that that's it. But I think it's every person's responsibility, if we've been told, and now that we know, to, if you have like a list of the symptoms of what you can have, what you can experience,
Yeah.
and then if you feel something like maybe you are getting night sweats, you can just maybe tick that, see how long it's been going on for, how long does it last, does anything trigger it? Because sometimes we do have things that triggers some of our
Yeah.
symptoms. And it's easier to have that conversation with your health practitioner, because you've got a list.
You've got a record. Yeah.
Yes. Because what I found with menopause for me was that things, you feel it, but it's unlike when you're going, you're like, I've got a migraine, I've got a headache,
Yes.
and it's a huge thing.
It comes on suddenly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's easier to go and say to I feel like this. But when you're going and like, I just don't feel okay. And there's so many little things that add up together to make you not feel okay, but taken individually seems so small. And I'm not sure if you're like me, but I'm having spoken to a lot of women that like, they're too busy. They're too busy with their work, too busy with their family, too busy to think, I'm going to make an appointment. And you know how difficult that is.
Oh, absolutely. Even trying to get past the gatekeeper of the receptionist, that's difficult in itself. But like you say, it's hard to get that appointment. But once you get there, it's also hard to explain because you don't understand yourself what's going on. Now, for me, it was slightly different because I'm in a medically induced menopause. So I didn't have the kind of the peri-menopause timing and that part of the journey because it was induced. So I went from obviously having irregular periods and painful and things like that with the endometriosis to starting on the Prostab. And within a month, that was it. I didn't have any more periods. So I went from kind of zero peri-menopausal to being in that menopausal state. So I've jumped all of kind of the slight little things that build up to then being in the menopausal state where everything kind of seemed to happen at once. And it was very much kind of all fast forward. It didn't drip feed over amount of time. And that was a big shock. Because again, like you say, I'd heard about the night sweats and your hot flushes and maybe feeling a little bit irritable. But the other little things, like the brain fog and the other symptoms, I just wasn't aware of those.
And you're not alone. A lot of us are not aware of them at all. Yeah. And it's difficult as well. I mean, what frustrates me, there's a lot of things that frustrate me about menopause. But one is that we're not told about it. And I don't remember my mum ever speaking about it at all. I don't remember anybody within my mom's circles for me to be aware that there was something going on. But I look back now and I see the signs and I see the things. And I remember one of the things, my mom was quite a very forceful, very assertive person. And she went through a phase where people gave her a nickname.
Okay.
And I mean, when I say phase, I probably realized at the time, and I realized that's probably when she was going through it. And they called her my baby, which means burning up like fire. Like some like if you put fuel on fire and it just, that's what they called her as a nickname. And I look back and I think, oh, that must have been what it was, because she never was like that before. And then there was this person who you were suddenly afraid to speak to. But because she did a lot of work outside the home, my dad was probably the main carer in our home. So we didn't really experience too much of it. We didn't, but my older siblings did, and everybody.
And your dad, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure he did, but he didn't tell us anything about it. So it's the not knowing about what's happening is frustrating. Also, the fact that the doctors are not really trained in menopause. They're lucky if they get. Well, I think in certain countries they may have a day of training on menopause. That's the second thing. And then one of the things, though, that I was frustrated about, but having spoken to a gynecologist and an obstetrician, and he's got a menopause clinic, was explaining, because I was like, why do they not listen to us? I'm a certain age. I go in and I keep going back with little things. Why does no one ever say this is it and this is what we need to look at? And you want to do all the other tests, and and you don't use the word menopause in it. And he was explaining to me that apart from the blood test not being accurate, because our hormones fluctuate up and down.
Well, of course, yeah.
So you could go and get the test and they could be up, so it comes back as normal. You could go and get a test the next day and they're down, and
absolutely,
and
yeah.
You are. So it's really not
It's very hard to pinpoint, isn't it?
Yes. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, he spoke about the fact that menopause is natural. Everybody goes through it. You may go through it really badly, or you can sail through it. I wish I was one of those.
I think we all wish we were one of those.
So he was saying that because it's a natural condition, it's not something that we stress too much about. We want to make sure and eliminate that anything else that is not natural is what's happening. So you'll come to me and you present with symptoms that may mimic. So menopause, there are other things that mimic menopause. So you could come in like, I'm so tired, I'm not sleeping, I'm not, maybe my appetite has changed and I'm gaining weight or I'm losing weight, because some people do. And his first thought is not, yes, menopause is at the back of his mind, but he's also thinking, is your thyroid okay?
Yes.
Is your kidney? So he will test for all that first to make sure that he eliminates all that. Then he knows that the conditions are all to do with menopause. So it's like, so why didn't you say that? Why did you not say that to us?
So it's like they're ruling out all the other options before they get to the big M word that, is scary for a lot of women, to think that they're starting to go through that or going through it. But if it's spoken about more and educated more, not just to the doctors, but to also to workplaces, to corporate companies, to different places. It doesn't matter whether it's a high street store that you work at or you work in a big office somewhere in the city. There's not enough education around it for employers either. If your workforce is 50-50, male and female, 50% of your workforce are going to go through that at some point.
Yes, and then 50% are going to be affected by it.
Yeah, well, exactly. So technically 100%. Exactly. But that's the thing, it's not spoken about enough because it's not understood enough. And that is, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. Obviously, with Gyne Talks, we talk about all things gyne related, from endometriosis, fertility, menopause, and male fertility as well. I was actually speaking to somebody just before about male fertility, and it's a massive thing because they're all very sensitive, kind of private things that you don't necessarily want to talk about. But that's also led us to where we are today, is that because it's not spoken about, people don't understand it. That's
right, yeah. And what I find within the workplace is that a lot of people have policies. They have menopause policy.
Okay.
It's stuck somewhere within especially the big corporate firms. It's stuck somewhere in the intranet of your company's thing. So it's there. It's good that they have it. But then if you're not educating people about it and you expect it to, you've joined a huge company. You've got your day-to-day job, which is busy in itself.
Yeah.
And you're trying to navigate menopause. You're not really going to go and think, I'm going to dig through this whole thing to see if they've got a menopause policy. It usually happens when you're starting to not, maybe miss days of work.
Absolutely, yeah.
You start getting pulled up on it maybe. And that's when...
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of making sure that people are aware of all the help that's out there. Educating the managers. I'll give you an example of, I had at one point a male manager, and I had now established that I knew what I had was menopause. So the things for me, the brain fog, I just could not remember anyone's names. And I deal with a lot of people's names.
Yeah.
And I'd say to my manager, when you want any information from me about anybody, can you please email it to me? Or give me time to go and think, because it takes so long for my mind to register what that person, what that information is about what you want to find out. So he said yes, because we'd gone through this occupational health. He'd been told that he needed to support me, and he was like, okay, I'm good for this. What do you need? And that was one of the things I'd say.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And please don't have meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, because my brain it's almost like an old car that you needed to crank up. And I found
slowly wind it up.
Slowly wind up my brain. And by the time it came to about 10, 11, I was able to kind of function quicker. In the morning, it was just a struggle. So those were the two things I asked for at that time. Is like, I really am struggling with this right now. We can talk about the other things, because the other things were quite easy to manage. A week later, it wasn't even a week later, I was like maybe on the Friday, I walked into the office and he immediately, because it was an open plan office, so he said to me, oh, can you tell me about so and so and so and so? And I looked at him and I thought, what? And he said, well, I need that information right now. Could you come up, could you tell me about it? So I said to him, well, do you mind if I just get to my desk first and then, I'll come back and we can discuss it? Or can you just email me what you need and then I'll get back to you? And he said to me, well, no, I need it right now. So I just decided, okay, Heather, you now know the calming techniques. Just walk away and go and put your laptop down and settle down. And then I couldn't remember now the person's names because I'd forgotten. I wasn't going to remember their names anyway because it was first thing in the morning and my memory was that bad. So I decided I'm going to email him and say to him, can you give me those 2 names again? And I can, come back and let you know what that was about. And he decided that he was going to come in and tell me. And he said, well, I told you less than 2 minutes ago, it's so and so and so and so. How do you not know about this? And I was like, I'm sure I know about it. I just cannot recall it right at this minute. So just give me a couple of minutes and I'll just need to refresh myself on what it's about. And I'll come and tell you what the story is. And he was like, I cannot believe this. We just talked about this. And then he walked, and I can understand he was, he was busy, but I just thought that way was the worst thing he could have done. And one of the other things about my menopause symptoms, I became so emotional. Everything was like 100-fold. So I just burst into tears. And I'm in an office full of people and I'm thinking, Heather, get a grip. It's just somebody was just asking you about names. But the more I try to tell myself to calm down, the
worse it comes. Yeah. And when you start crying, and even if you kind of inside you've calmed yourself down and you start feeling like, okay, I've got a bit more of a grip on this, but your tears are just still coming. You just can't switch them off.
So I went away, went to the bathroom, got myself together, came back, and then I found the thing and I spoke to him about it. And he then didn't say anything. I said I wasn't going to address it on that day because I was way too emotional about it on that day. So I said to him, can I have a word? Can we have a meeting next week on Monday? And he said, yeah, that's fine. And he said to me, I'll look in my diary and I'll put a meeting in. And he put a meeting in on Monday morning at 9 a.m.
Oh, brilliant. Just what you wanted.
This discussion last week. So I declined that meeting and I put one later on. And he went back and he said, I can see you don't have anything in your diary at 9. I'll prefer if we have it first thing in the morning. And then I declined it back and I said, I'll explain the reasons when we have this meeting at 10:30. So we went to the meeting and I explained what had happened. And he said, oh, yeah, because I heard you were crying. And I was like, why? What was going on? And then basically his excuse was that, well, his wife we're the same age.
Okay.
His wife doesn't experience things like that. And, she's never cried because someone's asked her, a straightforward question. And, we can have a perfectly good conversation as soon as we wake up in the morning.
But that's not the same for everybody.
That's the thing about educating. So because his knowledge of menopause comes from what his wife experienced.
Yes.
And because he's not taught, there's no knowledge out there. Nobody's there telling everyone that actually just because one person feels like that, that doesn't mean the next person feels like that, especially as a manager, because if you're managing people and they're going through different things and they've got different expectations and they've got different symptoms, you need to be able to know how to do that. So that's one of my biggest gripes about workplaces is that definitely having a menopause policy as a policy and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a menopause policy there, which is maybe a couple of paragraphs, and it's just popped into the system.
It's a tick
box exercise. Has anybody actually read it? Are the managers equipped to deal with that? And even colleagues, though, it's not just the kind of the higher up staff, it's your colleagues that you're working with because you're on a day-to-day with them. Like you say, it's an open office. You've probably got 3 or 4 people sat around each kind of pod area. And it's making sure that everybody is aware of what could be happening. And it's difficult. Everybody goes through lots of different things during their lives. You could wake up one morning and just be in a really rubbish mood and just that's it for the day. And we all sympathize with that. And I know that I was talking with somebody else as well that, it's an invisible condition. The same with, fertility and endo and other kind of gynae related issues, that because it's all internal, the same as with mental health and things like that, you don't have a arm in a sling or a leg in a brace or something. So you don't physically see what's going on until you start talking to somebody, and then you think, oh, what's going on there? And obviously we don't want to walk around with a sign on our chest, say, peri-menopause or beware on the back. But there are things that we can do to actually open those conversations more. And I think it is just so important that, like we said, workplaces especially are talking about this, and even talking with, younger male and females about it, because things are happening a lot earlier. I mean, I'm nearly 38, so I was 35 when I was kind of launched into the menopause. And even when I go and talk to people now about it, they're like, well, you're quite young. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's not something we go through as younger ages. I know, naturally women can go through it at any age, but it's just being open and talking about it. But that also comes with difficulty because, like we say, it is personal and everybody goes through it in a different way, but it's still something we need to be talking more about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example of why. I mean, I think it should work, and just to reinforce what you're saying about education. So it is invisible, yes, but if people have a little bit of knowledge, then they may put two and two together. So I'm just trying to think. Way before I realized I was perimenopausal, I had to move my office, and now I'm not a warm person. I like my warmth. And I think, I don't like the cold.
No.
So when I moved into this office, the lady that was in there she had turned off the radiator and she left the window open.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I thought, why do you always have the window open? And that used to really irritate me, and think, well, we're in an office. I've got to sit here with my jumper and everything else, and you've got the window open and you've got the radiator. And I remember saying I went to ask if I could change the office, and I was told, no, you have to stay in there because it was quite a big office. We can't give you anything else. And because at that time, I really didn't know what was going on. Now, looking back in hindsight, I obviously realized now that she was going through perimenopause or some sort of stage in her menopausal journey.
Okay.
And had I known that, I wouldn't have felt such an angst against her.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And even though it's in a workplace, I won't say I disliked her, but I just did not go out of my way to be understanding.
It puts that barrier there because you're kind of like, oh gosh, she's opened the bloody window again. And why does she keep opening the window? It's raining. But that's the thing, because we don't understand.
Yes.
And it's difficult. And I find that sometimes I'm a lot, again, can go in phases where I'm a lot warmer, and other times I can just be really cold. And it's that balance.
Yes. Can't get it right.
No, you can't get it right. You layer up to go out the house, and then you're like, right, you pop out, and then all of a sudden you're like, why have I got so many layers on?
That's right. Yeah. So I do think it's important for everybody to know, because once you know, you're more compassionate, you're more empathetic,
absolutely,
you're more understanding, and and it just makes everything easier, a whole lot easier for yourself and for everybody else around you. So I do think definitely there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of the workplace.
Definitely.
For the person who's going through it to be able to advocate for themselves, and be firm enough to get what they need. Because everybody thinks you just need a desk fan. Like, no, I don't just need a desk fan. There's a whole lot of other things that I need.
I mean, a desk fan will be helpful, but it's not going to sort out the whole issue. So what about kind of coping mechanisms or hints and tips that you've kind of found yourself that have helped you along the way?
Along the way. So multitasking is a no-no. Now, I'm one of those people who have always been very good at that.
Yes.
And it's taken me a long time to accept the fact that I should not multitask.
Yeah.
Because when I go back and have a look at what I did, it's all wrong. I think I'm doing a good job at the time. So one of the things that I've learned to do is to try and write down a list, because I can't do it without writing a list. I used to
love a list. Love a list.
A list of what I need to do, and then I break that down into chunks as well.
Yeah.
Because my normal thinking would be, okay, I've got to do a certain big chunk of work. Let's say maybe I'm trying to think what about clean the house, for instance. So that will be a clean the house on my to-do list. But then that is so now in my head, I have to now break that task down into, okay, so am I, when I say clean the house, is it just hoovering? Am I dusting? Am I doing a deep clean? Am I spring cleaning? What does that look like? So I have to really break it down into small tasks. So that's like in a home environment. And in terms of work, in the way I've stopped multitasking is that I actually switch off my emails. I take off the notifications when I'm doing a certain piece of work. So I give myself every hour, I'll check them. But by checking them, it also gives me a time to stop doing what I'm doing and focus on something else. But in between that, I have a glass of water. And that's because I don't drink enough. So dehydration makes your brain fog worse. It makes your mental clarity not that great. So when you keep hydrated, it helps. But I'm good at drinking water in summer. I'm not good at drinking water when it's cold.
No, in the winter you want warm drinks and to keep nice and warm, like a cup of tea or coffee.
But I find with the cup of tea, I'm not drinking enough liquid.
Yes,
it's not
of course, yeah.
So what I do is once I have put a timer to be able to check my emails every hour, when that timer comes up, I go and get a glass of water. Now, sometimes when it's really good, I can have the glass of water and sip it through the hour.
Yeah.
When it's really bad, I know I'm not going to do that. I gulp it down. And then I go back and I'll check the emails. And then I'll go back and I just kind of like walk. If I'm at home, I will, probably go into something else, like think about what I'm going to cook for dinner, take one thing out, just so that I'm not doing the same thing and I'm not sitting in the same space. And if I'm in the office, I'll go and chat to someone about something that probably I need to do, but it's not I don't have to think too much about it. Yeah. So definitely breaking down stuff into smaller chunks, doing the to-do lists and eating a good stuff, having good food. So things like omega-3s that you can I prefer having that in proper food rather than supplements. Because I think it's always better than supplements, but obviously sometimes we always need that to top it up. Increase the number of like nuts that you have, walnuts, have a lot of berries, a lot of green leafy vegetables. So try and incorporate that into your meals at whatever point during the day. So I find that helps. When I eat rubbish,
you feel rubbish. I think we can all kind of relate to that as well. If you're eating well, you function better, you sleep better. But then there's almost kind of as well that balance. You've got to have that balance of, I quite fancy going out for dinner tonight and having pizza, and that's okay. That's nobody says you can't do that. But like you say, with like the nuts and berries, that's quite good, because even if you're at a desk or you're working, you can just nibble those as you're kind of throughout the day. So it's really about keeping all of that
balance, and thinking of what it is that you're having and just trying to incorporate that in your day. Also, another tip is make sure that you get enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, your brain fog is going to get worse. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. I definitely find that with sleep, if I'm not sleeping well, my functioning is not great at all. And I think that's the same for everybody, isn't it? In general, sleep is very important. But sometimes it gets to a point in the day and I'm like, I really just need a quick nap.
Yes.
Like a nana nap, I like to call it. But it's so important to get that right amount of sleep. And when you've not had a great night's sleep, if you're having night sweats, or I actually quite often I go through little phases of having really bad nightmares. And I think that's all part of it as well, is because your brain is overactive. Even though you're trying to be in rest mode, your brain's going, no, you're not resting now.
That's true.
We're going through this.
Yeah, it's important to make sure that, doing things like gentle exercises, stretches, doing meditation, doing yoga, really helps to clear your mind. And one of the things that I have found, and I learned through one of my mentors, who told me that your brain can only keep 7 incomplete things, and it's and it's in your head until you. And if you keep any more, you start getting stressed and you will never rest.
And the overwhelm then is something else, isn't it?
So what he suggested, and I've done this and I found it really, really works for me, is that every day, like around 7, most often, I say every day, but I did quite a lot. A couple of hours before I go to sleep, I just jot down the things that are on my mind. And and whatever it is, I either do it then, or assign a time to do it, or just cross it off. You know, if it's not important, there's nothing I can do about it, I just park it because there's nothing. And in my mind, it almost feels like I've solved it, even though I've not actually solved the problem. But I've looked at it, I've actually made a decision about what I'm going to do about it, whether that's tomorrow, whether that's next week. It just helps to make sure that you're not carrying all that mental overwhelm before you go to
that
bed.
mental load of all the different little things. And it's funny that you say about being able to multitask so much better before, because I actually really feel the same with that. I used to be able, I'd be having, and I still do a lot of property investing, and I'd be multitasking lots of different things, different house projects, speaking with different investors and going and viewing properties, as well as, running the house at home and having a little one. And I just, for some reason, just be able to be full flow, crack on with it. I used to call it, put my big girl pants on and off we go. But now I find that so much harder to allocate that time. And my brain just goes, you're doing too much. And then it just wants to switch off and go, nope, you're not doing any of it. And it's kind of like you want to do all of it or none of it.
Yes, but you have to rephrase that. That's my tip, is rephrase that in your head. You're still putting your big girl's pants on. You still can able to do it. You're just doing it in a slightly different way. So as opposed to you just thinking, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and this. You just think, okay, in your day, really, realistically, you've got 8 hours. Let's just say you've got 8 hours to do all these things in, and just pencil it in and know that if I can't do this today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's just a different way of thinking. I think what it is we've relied on our brain a lot. We've relied on, on being able to do this without any external or any other way. And it's just a mindset. And I think a lot of the things with menopause, it's a mindset. It's what stories are you telling yourself? When you're forgetting, what are you telling yourself? You're still the same person. It's just a little bleep that's happened at that time. And I think that's one of the things that I tell the ladies that I work with, is that you're still you. You just need to find a slightly different way of doing things. And when you come across something that works, stick with it. Or,
absolutely
find something, because what will work for me might not necessarily work for you. But there are things that are obviously general that we can all do. But then we have these little things that we can do that makes it even better for ourselves. So another thing is stress. Obviously, like I said, it does make your cortisol levels rise, and that disrupts your memory and your focus. So and also stress, apart from the brain fog, it just makes all your menopause symptoms worse.
Absolutely. It makes everything worse.
That's true. So if you have to really try and minimize the stress in whatever way you can, and, just to exercises for your brain. So things like puzzles. I've started this new game on my phone. I'm quite addicted to it now. And it started because my daughter was saying to me, you need to find something else that where you don't think too much. Well, I thought I wasn't thinking too much, but it's just using a different part of my brain. Because one of the things I did find, again, and I'm sure a lot of people identify with this, is that you are so good at what you used to do. And then find yourself the example I can give is that I was able to take new information really quickly. Someone would come and tell me, I would read something once and I would understand it. And now I'm finding, as I learn new things, I actually have to read something a few times and have to write it down. And I was saying to my son the other day, it's so strange that I'll look at something the first time, I think, what? And then I'll read it again and I'll think, okay, and then I read it the third time, and then it's kind of, I start piecing the pieces together. And then maybe when I do it the fourth time, or when I write it down, it suddenly makes sense. And my son was like,
doing it gradually, isn't it? And like you say, that's a completely different way to that you were used to. You're used to be able to, I don't know, maybe reading something once and going, right, okay, there's point A, B, and C. Excellent. This is what I need to do. Off we go and do it.
Exactly.
But now it's absolutely. And I completely can get on board with that and understand where you're coming from with it, for sure.
Yeah. And so it's important to not feel like this is not me. I've lost some identity. I'm not going to be, achieving. You're just doing it in a different way. That's all it is just finding a different way. and being okay with it. It's the being okay with it.
That's a massive part of it, isn't it? Because you do feel like you've lost yourself in one way or another. Not necessarily you've lost a part of you, but there's certain things, and it's about making those adaptations. But sometimes that can really get you down. You'd be like, oh, bloody hell, I could really do, I could do this really quickly before. Or you could, I don't know, like, for example, with the car situation, when I was up in the town, I was just be like, I know this place. Why is it that I can't remember now? And it does drain you. It really does. And that's where it comes back to kind of getting enough sleep and things like that, because your attention is drained a lot quicker by trying to do too many things. I think we're all guilty of trying to do too many things at once.
We certainly are. And maybe it's nature's way of telling us that we've done it for so long. We now need to start looking after ourselves more.
And time to slow down a little bit more, and taking a little bit more you time as well. I think when you're in that busy, hectic kind of lifestyle with work and home life and children potentially and different clubs or whatever you've got to deal with for them as well as yourself, it's actually trying to find a time, even if it's just once a week, to spend just with yourself. And that could be broken up into kind of 15-20 minutes, but if you can find that little bit of time, and I see that in the evenings once my son's gone to bed, I need to have that own wind down time to myself, just to kind of ease myself out of the day and park those things, like you say. But I think that tip of writing those things down that's still in your brain at that point of, okay, when can I do those? Is that actually really important to be worrying about? Could I just take that off the list? Or, okay, I'll do that tomorrow at 2:00 or something like that. Then that's a really good way of actually starting to manage that. So I'm going to definitely take that on board. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's been great to speak to you. There's just so much that I think we could probably talk all day. But it's been great to kind of understand it from somebody else's perspective as well, that are going through these things and the thoughts and feelings we all have around that. And like we touched on before, mental health is really important during this time, as it is any time, during life. But when you've got all of these little things that start happening and you can't piece it together, it can be very scary and quite a dark time. So that's, something, as we both spoke about, that if we can kind of spread the word a little bit more and make people more aware of things, and it's, even if we can just help one or two different people, it's a good step forward, because we know that news travels that way. Is, if you're talking to 3 or 4 people about it, they will then go and speak to the same amount, and it's that kind of domino effect, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've with that in mind, I just thought I would. I've got a little ebook that you can share with people.
Oh, amazing! Yeah,
and it's about it's just a guide on what you can do. I go a bit more into depth about what you can do with, to help yourself with brain fog.
Oh, so, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Share that with me for sure. And then I will share that out obviously on the link when this podcast episode goes out, and also with on social media and things like that. So that would be amazing, Heather. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So thank you again for joining me today. It's been great to chat with you and meet you face to face as well.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it was lovely to chat, and I'm so glad. You keep doing the work that you're doing. It's these things do need to be spoken about.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of people's mental health will actually be better.
Yeah.
Because the more we speak about it, the less often an issue it becomes, less we have to hide it and carry it. We don't want to carry the load on our own.
Absolutely. It's about lightening that load. And as we said before, other people being aware of what could be happening, especially, as we say, in the workplace, when even if it's not male dominated, it's something, as we said, we all go through as women. And the other half, the males, they're going to have to come along that journey as well. So it's about everybody having that little bit more knowledge on these things and helping each other. That's definitely the way forward. So again, thank you so much, and I will speak to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.